I'd like to welcome everyone to this celebration of poetry, community building, and the changing of our guard for the Poets Laureate of North Andover. My name is Gail Henney. I'm a former two-term Poet Laureate of North Andover and also co-chair of the Poet Laureate Committee along with Jill Barker. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the trustees of the Stevens Memorial Library, at least 3 of whom are here today. Thank you for supporting literacy and poetry here in this library. Also, the Friends of the Library and the director of the library, Kathleen Keenan, have always made us welcome here as poets. Previous Poets Laureate Ken and Nadine Delano, whose professional name as poets is Kennedy, have been having an open mic here for nearly 4 years. And Kathleen Keenan has made them welcome and provided them with space. So thank you very much for doing that, Kathleen. Would you like to come up and say a few words?
Sure. I have to tell you, I'm one of those people who as a child didn't understand what poetry could mean to me. And I have to tell you that North Andover finally made the difference, and I get it. So we won't tell my English teachers that. So I'd say thank you, North Andover, for bringing poetry to me individually and seeing what it can be in the community. I have to say the first time I saw Ken and Nadine perform, I was like, oh my gosh, if they'd only done that when I was young, I would have come to this conclusion a long time ago. So I think we've been really blessed to have all the poet laureates, and they brought different kinds of poetry to us so people see that it's a really diverse approach to language, to understanding ourselves and understanding people. So Stevens is really committed to making this a place where people come to find poetry, to do poetry, and as Gail said, make friends in the community with people who really want to either learn about or already love poetry. So thank you and have a wonderful night tonight.
Thank you, Kathleen. Today is a day to applaud the fine work of our previous Poets Laureate, Ken and Nadine Delano. Unfortunately, Nadine isn't here tonight. She's teaching. She's also a dancer besides a poet. But we do have Ken here today. And I just want to briefly take a moment or two to tell you some of the wonderful things that they've done in the town. For 2 years, they did shows and workshops in the schools of North Andover and in Lawrence. They have celebrated National Poetry Month at the North Andover High School with students and staff. They have hosted, as I mentioned previously, Tuesday for Poetry, which will follow immediately our celebration today. So if you'd like to hear original poetry, please stay. It's always interesting. Additionally, Ken and Nadine represented North Andover at the Alliteration Nations celebration in Merrimack, and they twice created the poetry, which was here in the North Andover Library, and if you saw it, it would be hard to forget. It was a beautiful mural of a tree that Nadine Delano actually painted. And adults and children had the opportunity of writing a poem which was then placed on the tree. So it brought families into the library to see what the children and people like me had put on the tree. Additionally, it had a second life in that the Poet Laureate Committee had some of those poems laminated, and they were hung from the trees at the Stevens Coolidge Place, which is a garden. So it was really rather wonderful to walk through the apple orchard at that garden and see the poems, wafting in the wind. So poetry has many expressions, and in North Andover, it has multiple locations. So you can hear that Ken and Nadine are a difficult act to follow, but I am sure that Mark Bohr, who is our newest Poet Laureate, is ready for the challenge. What I'd like to do is invite Ken, who's here tonight, to receive a small token of appreciation from the Poet Laureate Committee. Ken, could you please come up? This is a CD set of the wordsmith and the singer, Natalie Merchant. They're on this. There are over 100 musicians, so have at it. You have been wonderful with bringing something that sometimes we poets can forget is such a part of poetry, and that's fun with a capital F-U-N. They have been delightful. They bring movement of the body to poetry. So thank you.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to introduce Mark Bohr, who I'm very happy is our next Poet Laureate. Since 2016, he's written 3 chapbooks, and I'll just briefly read the title of each to you. One is A Crowd of Joy at the Door, High Tide on the Other Side of the Earth, and his newest, which he actually presented at the Board of Selectmen meeting, where he was unanimously voted as our current Poet Laureate, is A Good Inland Town. And it's all about us. It's all about North Andover. So thank you for having done that. And now I would ask you to come up and have a few words, please.
Thank you. This is very nice. And it's so funny that I found myself into this position because I really do enjoy writing civic poetry about North Andover, where I've lived for 20 years now. So it's like a natural. So I'm glad I have the opportunity. And so I actually thought I would read something kind of current topic, a topical poem that I wrote. The Board of Selectmen proclaimed and they did the vote a couple months ago, but then it was made official this week, where they are proclaiming that Columbus Day now has 2 names in the town of North Andover. It's Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day. And there's really a wonderful proclamation that they put together that goes through the history and the reasons why it's done. And part of it is to reconcile the people who live here now with the people who are still in this area, although certainly not in the same numbers, but whose land it used to be, the indigenous peoples of this part of Massachusetts. And so I wrote a poem and read it at the selectmen meeting last night. They were nice enough to let me read that. And here it is, so I thought I'd read it. It's time for Indigenous Peoples Day. First, it's not true that I can only speak in rhyme. I can't talk that way on cue, and who has the time? I can only say what I say, and for that I'm not sorry. Poets arrange words this way when we want to tell a story. And that was my intro, so. And of course, that was in rhyme. Columbus explored, for that he's rightly known. But as we've learned some more, our knowledge has only grown. In the story we all learned, some chapters were left out. Other people here, they yearn to be heard without having to shout. Columbus changed the world, and at our alma maters, one thing will never change: he'll remain an important man. But as history has unfurled, the distance has made some things clearer. We don't want the lesson shortchanged. We want our kids to learn, to truly understand. We want our kids to read from all the missing chapters. We want our kids to gain from every class completely. We want our kids to know that books can have many authors. We want our kids to hear the story of our entire human family. If that means we change the name from time to time of some of our favorite holidays, then I believe, if I may claim, we shall all be a little better, and in the end, I believe, we shall even be okay.
Mark comes to the Poet Laureate position a little different than others of us because he was trained as an engineer. So I'm also interested in seeing how that will play out as we go forward in your 2-year tenure. I'm hoping to learn a little engineering. We'll see what we can do. I'm not the quickest of learners that way. And now what I'd like to do is invite you all to join in our celebration. There's a lovely cake that was donated by Dominic Mondi, who is the manager of Stop and Shop. So Dominic, thank you. And also, please stay around, get to know the other poets in the area, because by building a community, we gain strength. And I think that that's important for us all to remember. Not division, but strength in being together. So thank you very much. Let's eat cake.